All right, so for those who aren't familiar with that clip is from a classic, honestly, a classic movie titled Soul Food. And the characters who were going back and forth, or at least the women, were relatives. And one of the relatives, whose name was Faith, was being called out for being intimate with another relative's husband, as we could see in the clip depicted earlier in this analysis. And the reason why I wanted to use this movie as one of the muses for this analysis is to depict sometimes your enemy is in your camp. And I want to depict this dynamic more so by referencing family dynamics, that were prevalent in some of our beloved movies and TV shows, just to hone in on this point that sometimes you are dealing with the person who is in your intimate circle, and because they have that kind of access, their envy has been brewing for a significant amount of time. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started with this analysis. So I wanted to complete this analysis before we finished off with the holiday season of this year, because I know for some of us, the holiday season is a time of festivity, of harmony, and of bringing everyone together and just having a great time. But for others, the holiday season is super triggering for reasons such as this. You may have been someone who was scapegoated in your family. You may have been someone who dealt with exponential competition and jealousy and envy in your family. So when you think about the holiday seasons, you oftentimes think of ostracism and isolation, either by choice or because you were forced out of the family system because you didn't abide by their abuse tactics. So I wanted to reference, this dynamic between Terry and her family member Faith, and that classic betrayal of Faith, messing around with her husband, as one of the muses in this analysis, to depict how sometimes your family can be your catalyst for a lot of the conflict and the chaos that you experience in your life, because they feel entitled to access, and they also feel entitled to your forgiveness. People find themselves constantly experiencing like a blindsided sensation, because they're just like, okay, I allowed this person to do this and then I forgave them. We addressed this past thing that they did and then I forgave them. Why do they keep going out of their way to betray me? And it's because, due to the family system being so unique and all of the members wanting to keep pretty much the family system copacetic, for lack of better words, or to establish some kind of homeostasis, some kind of predictability, even the individuals who may see that someone may be wrong, they're going to do everything in their power to keep the harmony and to not address the conflict, because it will cause some kind of disruption to the system and the foundation of the family. So forgiveness and family structure specifically is often exploited. And even though forgiveness is needed in your intimate relationship so that you guys can make amends, you guys can repair any, ruptures in the relationship, nevertheless, when you are being exposed to somebody who is actively trying to orchestrate your downfall, this notion can actually be exceptionally dangerous. So someone who has been eyeing your life for a minute with a jealous eye, an envious eye, specifically within your family structure, is exceptionally dangerous, because they've had an exceptional amount of time around that thing that they are jealous of, that they're envious of. And they also have other people in their environment that's associated with you and them that oftentimes enables their envy, or at least their envious tactics, which is typically rooted in gaining access to whatever it is that they are envious of you for, or that they harbor some kind of jealousy towards, so that they can destroy it or so that they could take it for themselves. And what makes a family so unique is, yes, the person who harbors feelings of envy is the catalyst for whatever chaos the person that they've targeted is experiencing when they're actively trying to sabotage that person or sabotage what it is that they're coveting. However, who really plays a part in the damage, and I know that this is going to be like a crazy take, but who really plays a part in the damage is bystanders, people who don't interject, people who don't advocate for the target, and most importantly, people who don't hold the envious person accountable in respects to their sabotage tactics. To better explain the types of people in a family structure who enable an envious person, I'm actually going to read a section in the book, and it's one of the envious archetypes listed. and it's the envy enabler. So I'm going to go ahead and read from that section to provide more context. This is an envious individual who presents themselves as an ally when they really aren't. They create an illusion where targets of envy feel they can confide in them because they always listen to them, not realizing the envy enabler is always there to feed off others' pain to feel better about themselves or benefit from others' inability to thrive. The envy enabler and an envious individual is similar is they have a common desire. They don't want to see others thrive. So when you experience envy, especially on different occasions, like it's repetitive, when you experience envious attacks, envious jabs in a family structure specifically, you have to understand that after a certain point, it is no longer coincidental. It's become intentional with all parties who are present and all parties who are involved. But I wanted to specifically hone in on that enabling point because a healthy family structure, or one healthy person in a family structure, or the few outliers in a family structure who actually do not endorse enabling, and instead they are willing to hold the catalyst for any kind of disagreements, any kind of conflict accountable, you will realize that they are the people who actually are repelled by the idea of enabling toxicity within the structure. And that actually brings me to the presentation of our second muse for this analysis, which will actually be Lady May from the show Greenleaf. And I had a separate analysis on Lady May because I love her character so much and I love that show. But her dynamic with her daughter Charity and how she was holding Charity accountable for betraying her sister for selfish gain. So in that clip, as I previously stated, Lady May was holding her daughter accountable as far as when you create any kind of division within the family structure, you make us vulnerable. And this is something that I've always stated just off the record with people in my intimate environment and just us having open conversations about things that we've observed. I always state that it's so important for people to play their role. Play their respective role and stay in their lane and don't veer off into another person's lane, because the moment you do that, the entire team takes an L. And your role as a matriarch or a monarch in particular, especially a successful one, someone who really does have the best interest for their family, they understand this notion. They understand that all it takes is you knocking over one domino for the entire line to come crashing down. However, there is a flip side to the coin. Everybody doesn't view it that way, so they don't feel the need to protect the family structure and hold people who are causing conflict accountable. There are some individuals who actually fuel division and fuel conflict because they like the idea of others fighting over attention, fighting over their affection, or watching other people go at it makes them feel better about their situation. They may harbor feelings of envy towards the targeted person as well, so they don't mind someone else doing their dirty work on their behalf. It's just so many different reasons as to why someone would enable an envious attack in a family structure. And there's another section in the same book that I referenced earlier, titled The Divide and Conquer Tactic, that explains this point that I'm making a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and read from that section as well. And it states their agenda is to conspire drama, capitalize on separation, fuel division, ignite confusion, and strategically utilize miscommunication for their own ulterior motive. One may be asking what the ulterior motive may be. The ulterior motive is to create division amongst those whom they deem to be a threat and competition. So even though it's ideal that you have some kind of mediation when family conflict arises, the fact of the matter is this: when envy is prevalent, and it's been prevalent for a significant amount of time, it's often intentional. And you might have multiple people in your family structure who harbor feelings of envy towards you. You just are dealing with one who is more overt with their intentions and their feelings, and all of the enablers are covert with their intentions and feelings. Because we're differentiating covert intentions versus overt intentions, we're actually going to shift gears into our next muse for this analysis. And it's actually going to be from the movie Precious, which is so heavy. It was actually hard for me to even pull from certain scenes and clips to include in this analysis, but it's a reality.
You shut up and you let him abuse your daughter. I did not want him to abuse my daughter. I did not want him to hurt her. I did not want him to do nothing to her. I wanted him to make love to me. That was my man. That was my man. And he wanted my daughter. And that's why I hated her.
So for those who aren't familiar with the movie Precious, that clip was actually a depiction of a mother in the film sharing that she allowed her daughter to endure abuse out of jealousy, out of desperation to keep her partner around. So there are some situations where individuals, trigger warning, but there are some situations where individuals experience some kind of favoritism, or they experience like an exponential amount of attention in a family structure because they are acting as a sacrificial lamb. They are being exploited at the expense of keeping the family structure intact. And I dissected this way more in detail, especially in regards to physical exploitation in a family system. And I actually did so in my Lady May analysis, the Lady May character from the show Greenleaf, and I believe it's titled something like The Queen Can't Quit. And I went into a little bit more detail with this, and I'm, just to be mindful of not, re-triggering people, especially around this holiday season. I'm not going to go into too much detail in this analysis. However, I did want to bring it up yet again, just briefly, to pinpoint the fact that there are some people who are assigned the sacrificial lamb role in a family. People will exploit the favor that a particular family member has in the family structure for their own benefit, but they also harbor envious feelings towards them at the same time. And that's what plays into that tumultuous dynamic, a lot of the betrayal, a lot of the backstabbing. And for those who have the book, what I'm describing right now is actually synonymous to the parasite listed in the book, as well as the leech envious archetype listed in the book, just to provide a little bit more detail for your personal reference. But the main reason why it's important to become familiar with these types of dynamics in a family structure is because after you forgave, after you've exercised patience, after you tried to mediate with other members and make sense of it, after a certain point, you have to put protective measures in place for yourself because it could lead to the unthinkable. And it's unfortunate in a lot of cases, not saying something super duper drastic that you can't bounce back from, but it could be something that is so heartbreaking that it takes you a significant amount of time to recover. And I actually want to close out this video by depicting our final muse for this analysis, which will actually be Mufasa and Scar from The Lion King.
Brother, help me!
Long live the king.
Not only is that a well-known infamous clip from the film, but it's also self-explanatory. You have to be careful of assuming that just because someone is within, an intimate aspect of your life, an intimate relationship, or you've known them all of your life, they're in your family, that you could trust them wholeheartedly. Because as we saw in that clip, it was Mufasa's very brother. It was the reason his life was cut short. So this analysis is dedicated for those who are actually gearing up for immense warfare this holiday season. Sometimes you find yourself not seeing any progress or taking one step forward just to end up 10 steps backwards because you have an enemy within your camp. So that's all that I have for this analysis today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that this video was helpful to whoever needed to hear it. Hopefully it was a word of encouragement because I know the holiday seasons can be heavy for some. But nevertheless, make the most out of your holiday season. Even if you experience the utmost betrayal and it was from someone that you love, that you gave your all to, that you were generous towards, that you forgave time and time again, understand that this is not the end all be all. It's simply a call for you to move differently. Okay, so once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and feel free to drop your comments, your opinions, and of course your experiences in the comment section below. I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next one. Happy holiday, babes. Take care.